morning and welcome to Arundel Presbyterian Church in Odenton, Maryland. I'm Brian Boudreaux, the clerk of session at Arundel and your host here in the lobby, the weekly program of the life of the church. So today is the third Sunday after Epiphany and we will be celebrating communion. So take a moment to get your communion bread and fruit of the vine ready for later in the service. We're very lucky today to have a special guest from outside Arundel, President of the Anne Arundel County School Board, Melissa Ellis. We'll talk about school reopening. Before we get to that, let's look at today's announcements. 1 week from today, on January 31st, we will hold the 29th annual congregational meeting. We will celebrate 2020 via Zoom. How 2020? And the plan is to include at least 2 breakout sessions so we have a chance to talk to others in the congregation. More information with the annual report is forthcoming. So Lent will be here before you know it. During the season, there will be a small group reading of Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. It was studied by Martin Luther King Jr. The book tried to address who Jesus was and what he says to encourage us in the ongoing struggle for justice in the world. So pick up Jesus and the Disinherited wherever you buy your books, and we will discuss each short chapter during Lent in small groups. So the small group offerings will be made available in the coming weeks. Please contact Kim Champagne or Pastor John with any questions. So Arundel members are invited to attend the ACT Introduction to Anti-Racism, and it's hosted by Arundel. So if you missed the Racism 101 and 102 sessions, there are 2 sessions, one on Tuesday, January 26th at 7 p.m., and the other on February 2nd at 7 p.m., both via Zoom. There's a link in the archive to register for these sessions. The next event of God's Love Embraces All Ministry team will meet on February 16th at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. The team will read the book Outside the Lines, How Embracing Queerness Will Transform Your Faith by Mahi Kim Court. Contact Amanda Cross for any questions or to RSVP. Also, the Gleam team will have a planning meeting on January 28th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. So contact Amanda Cross or Amy Tardif for a Zoom invitation. For our youth, Godly Play continues every Sunday from 9 to 9:40 via Zoom for kids grades K through 5. Julie Devers can get your kids signed up for that. And in a couple of weeks, that's going to be Sarah Fox. Logos is still going on with weekly activities. If you're not receiving the weekly email, please contact Amy Goldberg. The weekly Bible lectionary is every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Contact Pastor John for a Zoom invitation. Also, don't miss out this Friday, January 29th, is the parents group. They'll be meeting via Zoom at 8 p.m. Pastor John has the Zoom invitation for you there. Our standing social events are the Sunday Fellowship at 11:15. You can email fellowship@arcandove.org for a Zoom invitation. The crafting group meets the first Wednesday and third Wednesday evening of each month at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Amy Tardif has that Zoom invitation for you. Saturday game night with the deacons, Ellen and Greg Makar have the Zoom invitation for you there. Finally, Friendly Seniors Tea at 3 on Thursday via Zoom. Pastor Tim has a Zoom invitation there. This week, Governor Larry Hogan announced that schools should return to hybrid learning by March 1st. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot can be hard to discern what is actually happening. So we are fortunate enough to have with us today somebody who can cut through the din. Welcome, Anne Arundel County School Board President, Melissa Ellis. Thank you for joining me today, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me today. Glad to be here.
So we have a range of congregants, some who are very familiar with the school board, some who are not, some who have children, and some who don't. So could you just give us a brief bit of background about yourself and who you represent?
Sure. I represent District 4, which is basically the western part of the county, from Crownsville all the way over to Laurel. I have a background in management and human resources, and when my husband and I started our family began growing very quickly. And we made the decision for me to focus on raising our 4 children. We started out in the public education system. When our oldest was in 3rd grade, we made a decision for our family that homeschooling was the way to go for us. So I did educate all 4 of our kids up through middle school. But they rejoined the public school system for high school. I now have 2 that have graduated from the school system and 2 currently in high school. So I think I bring a kind of a unique perspective to the school board.
In addition to being president, you are also a parent who has to consider these decisions as well as we're going forward.
Right.
So this past year has something that we have never experienced before. So I have two children myself in the school system, and I remember when schools closed in Maryland back in March, we didn't know how long that was going to last. Right? We weren't sure if it was going to be 2 weeks or what. So can you describe for us, just maybe give us an inside view as a decision maker, what it was like then, and then the decision to extend to virtual learning into the 2020-2021 school year. I believe those decisions sort of set the scene for where we are today.
Right. So it was very different in the spring than it was in the summer leading into the fall and so forth. In the spring, the state superintendent of schools closed down the schools in Maryland. And so we were sort of at the state's mercy, but at the same time, it was reassuring that these decisions were being made at the state level because none of us knew what we were dealing with. So going into the fall, the decisions became, it was much more of a local decision about what to do with schools. And school systems throughout the state are all very, very different between their size, population density, case rates at the time when we're making these decisions. So they were unique to each school system. That being said, there certainly are a lot of varying opinions about what is safe when it comes to opening our schools and what is not. So I hope everyone can at least appreciate how difficult these decisions have been. I don't think there's a single decision that's been made that everyone agrees with because we're all trying to decide what's best for our families. But we also know more now than we did last summer and last fall. So while we were following certain health metrics, there's since been so much data out there about how schools operate, even with higher case rates, and that there doesn't tend to be spread in schools when schools are following safety protocols. So now we're in a place to look at it differently. But what has really changed the whole landscape is the introduction of vaccines for our teachers and staff. So that has allowed us to, I think, become more aggressive in pursuing opening our schools.
We have the governor's pronouncement this week, but AACPS has already been planning for this. There was a survey out for parents. Can we talk about the options then? What does March 1 look like for Anne Arundel County Public Schools? First
of all, March 1 is what we established as the date to, by March 1, begin opening our schools to hybrid learning. Parents may recall that back in the fall, we were approaching this goalpost of reopening our schools for hybrid learning, but then the case rates shot up. And at that time, we were taking a much slower approach where we were going to start with elementary school, get that going for a few weeks, and then phase in the others. At this point, we want to get all of our kids back in school. We are still starting with elementary school as far as getting our staff ready, because it really just depends on the availability of the vaccine as to how much of our staff will be able to reach by that March 1 date. So March 1 may be just elementary schools open, but we're hopeful that it will be all of our schools. It just depends on how much the staff, we can reach the staff. Out of the students who were opted into hybrid learning, half of them will be in the classroom Monday and Tuesday, and the other half will be at home participating through a call like this, through a video conference. And then Wednesday, everyone's home, and then Thursday and Friday, the other half will be in the classroom.
And so in that survey, then it's giving the choice to the parents and families on whether their children will go to an in-person learning environment, but they would still also have at least half the time a virtual learning environment as well.
Correct. Right.
Okay. If a family feels that their student should not be in person, that they can still learn through the virtual environment entirely.
That's correct. That's for the remainder of the school year. We don't know what the fall is going to look like yet, but we can assure parents who that this school year, yes, they have that option.
So could you talk just a little bit about the process? That is like, who did the school board consult? Where does the board look for information? And how do you work with the superintendent? How do you work with the state and the state superintendent?
Our superintendent meets at least weekly with the state superintendent and other superintendents throughout the state. So we rely heavily on the information that Dr. Arlotto brings back to us from there. He also consults with our county health officer, who gives us health guidance, and he has, Dr. Kalyana Raman has presented to the board on several occasions now, giving his advice. We also seek lots of input from the community. We also do take it upon ourselves to do our own research and really learn about the science.
So we have these hybrid learning options in place, and it sounds like, like we said, the parents have the options to decide on their comfort level. But can you talk about maybe just a little bit about the safety measures that are going to go in place? Maybe the things that we did not see before, before the pandemic, to help parents and the community understand what will be in place for both the teachers and the students.
So I was able to visit a few of our schools with the superintendent and Mr. Leone, the president of the teachers union, and we walked through some schools and I could see what it looks like. So what's different? The desks in the classroom are now very spread out, and there will be fewer students in the classroom than there were in the past. The hallways all have these portable automatic hand sanitizer units. Each classroom has a big bucket of wipes and hand sanitizer. They have set up additional areas for teachers to get their work done, whether it's making copies or teachers will be assigned to certain areas. So there's all these efforts to maintain distancing. Hallways will be different. In our high schools, I know that they're going to have one-way hallways because in high school, kids are changing classes much more than in the lower grades. So all kinds of things have been thought of and accounted for to keep our staff and our students safe.
And there'll be mandatory facial coverings?
There will be mandatory facial coverings, yes.
What happens if somebody doesn't respect the mandatory facial coverings?
I think similar to any other kind of behavioral issue in the school, it will be dealt with in the same way. There will be counseling, and if a student needs to be picked up, then that's what happens, yeah.
As we go back to the in-person learning, but will there be regular testing? And if so, how is that done and who will be tested?
All of our efforts are really being focused on getting those vaccines to our teachers and staff. So I don't have a specific answer at this time about the testing, but that is still part of the conversation.
Okay. So you mentioned vaccines and vaccines being a factor. So now I guess we've moved in the state of Maryland to phase 1B. And so does that allow our teachers then to get the vaccine?
So teachers and all school staff, anyone who's going to be in contact with our students are part of that phase 1B. My understanding is currently in the county, what the county offers, they are focused on our 75 plus population, but there's a separate effort going on to set up Severna Park High School as a vaccine clinic for all school staff. So we're just waiting on the word that supply is available. I'm super hopeful that that's going to start rolling out this week. So I do encourage our school staff to just hold tight and know that we are getting this ball rolling as quick as we can.
That's great and exciting news, and I think that should allay a lot of people's concerns.
Yeah.
In that respect. Yeah. So what if in the school somebody tests positive? What is the protocol then?
So I think it would be handled much like it's being handled now in businesses and private schools and elsewhere. Is that contact tracing begins immediately. If there is a known contact, let's say a student was in a classroom, I believe that classroom would be doing virtual school for a little while they quarantine and get tested, and it's safe again to go back to the classroom.
Okay. So as we move to the hybrid learning, that means students and teachers are learning in two different ways. How will that be balanced?
Certainly, it's not ideal. We all want to go back to normal. But virtual certainly isn't ideal either. It is working great for a lot of our students, but a lot of our students are really struggling. I have seen videos of the hybrid model in action. I'm actually trying to see if we can get a demonstration like that at our next board meeting. I've observed a teacher will call on a student in the virtual environment. They'll call on a student in the classroom, and they're interacting with each other.
And actually, this is a great moment to give a shout out to our teachers as well, who have had to absolutely just change everything they've done. And some of them who did not have experience in technology could now be IT professionals.
It's mind-boggling. And yes, 100%, they deserve all the credit.
So that, yeah, it has been a true demonstration this last year of how much our teachers really care for our students. So
Well,
thank
yes,
you.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us today and talking to the community about schools. I think we can all agree that what we want is the best thing for our students and our teachers. So these are some really serious decisions that we have to make. So thank you again for coming on here and talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
And thank you all out there for joining us today. Check out the webpage and the archive for more details on everything we've talked about today. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my wife, Abby, whose birthday is today. So don't forget about the fellowship hour immediately after the service. Have a great week. Keep wearing your masks and social distancing, and the live stream service will begin in a moment.